guys, so I decided to do a YouTube tutorial for an American Girl doll blanket because I feel like that the American Girl doll blanket tutorials out there are not super beginner friendly, like I thought. So, and I'm trying to do this so I can teach my niece Alice how to crochet. Um so the and I'm gonna obviously teach her this in person, but then have the written instructions and hopefully if her mom and dad allow, a video tutorial that she can go by. So your materials you will need, let me pull up my document notes that I started writing out. I need a 5mm crochet hook, ergonomic or non-ergonomic, whatever your preference may be. I prefer ergonomic. And then you need acrylic yarn 4-weight. I'm using the I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby because it doesn't shed, and this is probably the same yarn. This color, same yarn that I'm going to teach my niece Alice on. I got her own skein for that though. And then you need 2 locking stitch markers to mark your beginning and your end stitches. A tape measure to make sure that at the end that you're meeting the length or the width of the blanket. And then you need scissors and a darning needle. An add-on to the material list for the crocheted American Girl doll blanket, you will need a stitch row counter, or you can use a poppet as a stitch row counter, or there's this app called Easy Knitty, however you say it, which I will link down below, that you can get on Google Play or the Apple App Store, to keep count of rows. And I'll have the link to the YouTube tutorial in the Google Doc for those people who are interested. If you're looking for a beginner-friendly project and you, kind of like me, feel like that the YouTube tutorials out there aren't super beginner-friendly, you can reference the written pattern as well. So first I'm going to start making a slip knot onto my, this is how I do my slip knots, and then you put that onto your crochet hook and you tighten it just enough so it still can slide nicely back and forth, if that makes sense. Then I'm going to chain 53. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, and 53. And I count as I go just because it's easier for me to remember. And this is, with a 4-way yarn is a good size for an American Girl doll blanket. So, yep. And then I'm just doing I'm literally gonna do all single crochets to simplify it because that's the first stitch I'm gonna teach my niece how to make. So I'm just gonna do all single crochets. So you insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, excuse me. You pull up a loop, you yarn over, and you pull through 2. And then I make it so it's tight enough so there's no gaps. And then, okay, so I insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. And I keep doing that in all the stitches across the row until I have 52 stitches on the hook is what you're supposed to end with after your first initial, after doing the foundation chain, which is 53, and then and I forgot, before I completely forget, I need to mark my first stitch and my second stitch, and then I'll have to mark the ending stitch. And I like to use 2 different color stitch markers so you know which one is your beginning stitch and which one's your ending stitch. So I'm just gonna mark that first stitch, and I just put the locking stitch marker in the like that into that first stitch, and then you can continue crocheting. So I insert my hook, I pull up a loop, and I pull through 2. And then I just, like I said, I do that in every stitch across until I reach the last stitch on the row. So I will be back when I reach the, well, I'm almost towards the end, but yeah. Literally all I'm doing is just all single crochets. That's all I'm doing. So I'm just doing the simplest stitch you can for a beginner. And it's the first stitch I learned to crochet with, so it's the first one. And then I learned others as I went along, but I keep going down the my chain, and then I'll show you what I do when I reach the end of that. And I feel like as a beginner, even though I'm kind of more intermediate beginner, I feel like for a beginner, the stitch markers are definitely a useful tool. I still use them for certain things, so. Just when you're gathering your materials and stuff like that to do this video, that just remember, don't forget your stitch markers, especially if you want to have an even edge. It's good so that you don't miss your beginning and your last stitch. So I've gotten to my last stitch in the chain, so I just insert my hook and I pull up a loop and then I yarn over, and then to turn I chain one and turn, and then I insert my hook again. This is going to be the second row. I insert my hook again and pull up a loop and pull through two, and I go into the next one, the next stitch, do the same, and then here is where I will put the end around stitch marker into that first stitch that I just made on that side, and then I just continue doing the same thing for as many rows as will cover your American Girl doll. So I will be back to show you what that will look like. And I forgot that each time I chain one and turn, and then I have to insert my hook into that first stitch, I remove the stitch marker. You don't have to. I do. If it's easier for beginners, you don't need to remove it, but I figured I would put that in this video. And so I'm on row 3 now. So I just, again, I insert my hook, I pull up a loop, and I pull through 2. Insert hook, pull up a loop, I pull through 2. Insert hook, pull up a loop, pull through 2. And I make sure that every single time I do that, I make the stitches as tight as possible so there's no gaps. So I'm getting close to my last stitch of this round, which is round 3. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and then I just put it down somewhere where I know it is, and then I insert my hook, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. And then I'm gonna chain 1 and turn. Then I insert my hook, I pull up a loop, and I pull through 2. And then I'll go into the second stitch from the next stitch from that and do the same. And then I will mark that. I'll take my stitch marker and mark that stitch again. And I just find that works for me. As I said, if that doesn't work for you, then you can keep the stitch marker in there, but it's easier for me just to take it out so I know where my stitch is. And now I'm on row 4. And literally all this is all single crochets that I'm doing. That's it. Just all single crochets until you meet your desired length, which should be 26 inches wide, um, ideally. And so, and I'll let you know in the end how many rows that ends up being. You also want to make sure that each time you start a new row that you still have the 52 stitches. So, and if you don't, you want to count them to see where maybe you messed up, if you missed the stitch or any of that. So just make sure that after you do your foundation stitch, chain, excuse me, that you have 52 stitches on your hook, and that each row you keep that stitch count the same. So for me, I'm not necessarily counting them because I kind of know the stitch markers that I have, 52, but that's why I suggest you mark both beginning and end stitches, so you don't miss any stitches along the way. So I'm just going to go to the end of this row, and I can show you again with the other stitch marker what exactly it is that I do again. But all I'm doing is inserting my hook into the stitch and pulling up a loop, and then just pulling through two, and that's what makes up your single crochet each time. So again, I'm reaching my last stitch, and the as I said, you don't have to take the stitch marker out. You can either push it aside and insert your hook into the stitch. It's a little bit harder when you have the stitch marker in the way, and you can pull up a loop and pull through two, and then chain one and turn, and then you can insert your hook and pull a loop and pull through two, and then do the same on this stitch. I always go one stitch ahead, and then you can take your stitch marker out and put it in your other beginning round stitch. Or you can do what I showed you before, and you can remove the stitch marker ahead of time and then replace it. Just remember to replace it. But I just insert my hook, pull up a loop, and I pull through two each time. So this is round 5. And all I do, I'm on the last stitch of my row of row 5, and I'm just gonna remove the stitch marker this time. I insert my hook, pull up a loop, and I pull through two, and then I chain one and turn, and then I insert hook, pull up a loop, and pull through two, and I do the next stitch next to that, and if you want to see it better without the hook in the way, I insert the stitch marker into that loop, and then just make sure it's locked all the way, and then I put my hook back on that you're working on, and then I just keep continuing that for each row, and now I'm on 6. Again, all I'm doing is removing the stitch marker, and I'm inserting my hook, pulling up a loop, and I'm pulling through two, and then I'm going to chain one and turn, and then I will insert my hook again. 2. So now I'm on row 7, I believe. I'm gonna put back in my stitch marker. I'm on row 7. So obviously, yeah, definitely not gonna be more than 8 rows. I'll figure that out as I go along. Know what the row count at the end is, but it's basically just all single crochets across the row. American Girl doll blanket ends up being 48 rows exactly. And as you can see, it fits nicely over her. So I did 48 rows of single crochets, and so my next step, oops, gotta redo that stitch. So my next step is to cut your yarn, and then we want to cut our yarn. And I usually cut it about here, so I have enough tail to weave in. And then I grab my darning needle, and I like to use a a darning needle with a angled tip to it. You can also, if you prefer, use one with a straight tip. I prefer the angled, but I do have both. So what I do is I just I thread the yarn through my darning needle, and then I just put it through this hole and tie that off. And then I just weave in the rest of the yarn as I go, and then I just weave back the other way through a couple of stitches. So what I'm doing, and then I will go back the other way one more time. And then that should be it should be secure enough. So then what I just do is I snip off the tail so you don't see it. And then I do the same with the other starting end that I have. I threaded the yarn through my darning needle, and then I just weave in and out of a couple of stitches in, and I like to do it in not both directions, just because I find it makes it a lot more less likely to come apart. So now I'm going back through the other way, and then I will go back one more time through the other way and then snip off my excess yarn. And that is it, you guys. That's how you make an American Girl doll blanket. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I will be back soon. Bye.